December 20th, 1944, 07 to 15 a.m., near St. Vith, Belgium. A gray winter dawn struggles to break through the low clouds hanging over the Ardennes. Snow blankets the forest, muting footsteps but not the distant thunder of artillery. The air is sharp, biting exposed skin, and every breath burns the lungs of exhausted American soldiers who have been fighting and retreating for days. This is not a planned withdrawal. This is survival under pressure, as German forces push relentlessly through what history will call the Battle of the Bulge. In these frozen woods, the lines have collapsed. Units are scattered, communications broken. Small groups of American infantrymen move cautiously along snow-covered roads, weapons clenched, eyes darting toward the tree line. Many have not slept in over 48 hours. Ammunition is low, food is nearly gone. The sound of engines echoes somewhere ahead, closer than it should be. Suddenly, the crack of rifle fire snaps through the stillness. A burst of machine gun fire follows, tearing into the snowbank beside the road. Shouts in German cut through the chaos. The Americans dive for cover, returning fire, but it is immediately clear they are surrounded. German infantry emerges from the trees, supported by armored vehicles positioned just out of sight, their engines idling like predators waiting to strike. The Americans have no room to maneuver, no air support, no reinforcement. One by one, rifles are lowered. Hands rise slowly into the cold air. The firing stops. By 08 a.m., over 1,000 American soldiers are disarmed and herded together under guard. Among them is Sergeant Roddie Edmonds of the United States Army. He is not the highest-ranking officer present by insignia, but circumstances will soon make rank irrelevant. The officers have been separated earlier during the confusion of the retreat. What remains is a mass of enlisted men, frightened, cold, and uncertain of what awaits them. German soldiers shout orders, pushing the prisoners into formation. Boots crunch on snow as guards take positions around the group. Breath turns to vapor in the air. Edmonds scans the faces around him. Young men, some barely out of their teens, many wounded, some shaking uncontrollably. Whether from cold or fear is impossible to tell. The march begins shortly after. The prisoners are forced down icy roads toward a temporary holding area. The terrain is uneven, the pace brutal. Anyone who stumbles is shoved back to their feet at gunpoint. Edmonds keeps his voice low but firm, urging the men near him to stay together, to keep moving, to conserve energy. Leadership now is instinctive. By mid-morning, they reach a makeshift prisoner-of-war camp. Barbed wire fences cut hastily through the snow. Guard towers loom over the enclosure, manned by soldiers wrapped in heavy coats, rifles resting on wooden rails. The gate slams shut behind the prisoners with a metallic clang that echoes across the frozen ground. Inside the camp, chaos gives way to a grim order. German officers move through the rows of prisoners, counting, taking notes, shouting commands. The Americans are packed tightly, bodies pressed together for warmth. Frost forms on helmets and coats. Hunger gnaws at empty stomachs. It is here, amid the wire and watchtowers, that the reality of captivity settles in. These men are no longer combatants. They are prisoners, at the mercy of an enemy known for its ruthless efficiency and ideological fanaticism. Edmonds stands near the front of the formation. He knows German doctrine well enough to understand what comes next. Interrogation, separation, the systematic sorting of prisoners by rank, role, and, most dangerously, identity. As the day drags on, rumors ripple quietly through the crowd. Stories of camps, of executions, of what happens to Jewish soldiers if they are discovered. Fear tightens in the chest of those who know they cannot hide forever. Not far from Edmonds, a young private grips his coat, eyes fixed on the ground. Another man whispers a prayer under his breath. Edmonds notices these details. He files them away. Leadership, he knows, is not about authority now. It is about responsibility. The guards finally order the prisoners to stand at attention. A German officer steps forward, flanked by armed soldiers. His uniform is immaculate, his expression cold and deliberate. He surveys the mass of American prisoners as if inspecting cargo. The temperature drops as the sun begins to fade behind thick clouds. Snow starts to fall again, light but persistent, coating shoulders and helmets alike. Edmonds straightens his posture. He senses that something decisive is approaching, something that will demand more than obedience or endurance. The officer opens his mouth to speak, and in that moment, before a single word is spoken, The fate of hundreds of men hangs silently in the frozen air, balanced on choices that will be made not by armies or generals, but by one man standing behind barbed wire. The German officer's voice cuts through the cold with sharp authority. He announces that all Jewish soldiers are to step forward immediately. The words hang in the air, heavy and unmistakable. There is no confusion about what is being asked, nor about what it means. A ripple of tension moves through the ranks. Men glance sideways without turning their heads. Some stiffen. Others lower their eyes. Everyone understands the danger. Jewish prisoners of war are not treated as soldiers under the Geneva Convention. They are something else entirely in the eyes of the regime standing guard over them. Edmonds feels the shift instantly. He hears breathing change around him, quicker, shallower. He knows that if even a few men comply, the Germans will press harder. Names will follow. Interrogations, beatings, transfers, death. He steps forward before anyone else can move. His boots crunch against the frozen ground as he turns to face the mass of prisoners behind him. His voice rises, steady and unmistakable, cutting through fear and hesitation. "All prisoners," he orders, "step forward." For a fraction of a second, nothing happens. Then one man moves, then another, and another. 1,000 bodies surge forward together, closing ranks, boots stomping in unison. The entire group advances as one, until the front line is indistinguishable from the rest. No separation, no gaps, no names. The German guards shout, confused, raising rifle. The officer's expression tightens. This is not what he expected. He repeats the command, sharper now, demanding only Jewish soldiers step forward. Edmonds does not retreat. He stands firm, shoulders squared, breath visible in the cold air. "We are all Jews here," he says. The words are simple. There is no speech, no explanation, just a statement of fact that transforms the moment. The guards tense. A rifle is raised. The barrel inches from Edmonds' chest. Time slows. Snowflakes drift between the steel of the weapon and the fabric of his uniform. The officer steps closer. His voice drops, dangerous and controlled. He accuses Edmonds of defiance, of lying, of obstructing a lawful order. Edmonds does not argue ideology. He does not plead. He responds with law. "You will have to shoot us all," he says, "and after the war, you will be tried for war crimes." The threat is real, and the officer knows it. The war is not going as planned. Rumors of Allied advances travel even into camps like this. The officer hesitates, weighing risk against doctrine. Killing one man would be easy. Executing over 1,000 American prisoners is something else entirely. The rifle lowers. After a long, silent moment, the officer turns away. The order is withdrawn. The guards step back. The formation loosens, but no one moves. No one speaks. The danger has passed, but only just. More than 200 Jewish soldiers remain hidden in plain sight, alive because one man refused to allow fear to dictate action. The prisoners are dismissed back into the camp. As they disperse, no one congratulates Edmonds. There is no celebration. Relief comes quietly, in the form of trembling hands and deep, shaky breaths. Survival here is not loud. That night the temperature drops further. Men huddle together on wooden planks inside overcrowded barracks. Lice spread. Hunger gnaws. The smell of unwashed bodies and damp clothing clings to everything. Edmonds lies awake, staring into darkness, listening to coughing, whispered prayers, the distant footsteps of guards outside. Word spreads quickly among the prisoners about what happened. Not as legend, but as fact. A line that was drawn and held. Jewish soldiers quietly seek Edmonds out, offering thanks in murmured voices, some with tears freezing on their cheeks. Edmonds accepts none of it. He tells them only to stay alert, to stay together, to survive. Days pass, then weeks. The Germans test boundaries repeatedly, probing for weakness. They search barracks. They question individuals. Each time, Edmonds' stance holds. The prisoners remain unified. No names are given. The camp becomes a place where survival depends not just on endurance, but on trust. Trust that the man who stood once will stand again if needed. Beyond the wire, the war continues to rage. Artillery rumbles in the distance. Aircraft engines roar overhead, sometimes Allied, sometimes German. Each sound carries hope and fear in equal measure. Inside the camp, time stretches endlessly. But one thing has changed irrevocably. The men know that courage, in this place, is not found in weapons or numbers, but in a single decision made under the barrel of a gun. and the consequences of that decision are far from over. January 1945, exact date unknown. Early morning, Ziegenhain prisoner of war camp, Germany. The camp awakens before sunrise, not by choice, but by routine. A whistle pierces the darkness, followed by shouted commands. Prisoners spill from the barracks into the frozen yard, boots slapping against hardened mud and ice. Frost clings to beards and eyelashes. Breath rises in thick clouds. Roll call begins. Numbers barked in German, answered in hoarse English. Edmonds stands near the front again, posture rigid, eyes forward. He watches the guards more than the ground. Since the confrontation weeks earlier, scrutiny has intensified. Searches are more frequent. Interrogations last longer. The Germans have not forgotten the defiance. They are simply waiting for an opening. The prisoners are assigned labor details. Some haul timber. Others clear snow from roads leading toward nearby rail lines. The work is punishing, designed to exhaust rather than produce. Hands crack and bleed in the cold. Hunger dulls the senses, making minutes stretch into hours. During one work detail, a German non-commissioned officer pulls Edmonds aside. The man's tone is casual, almost friendly, but the question is not. "You are responsible for these men," he says. "You know who is Jewish." Edmonds meets his gaze without hesitation. "We are all soldiers," he replies. The officer smirks, unconvinced, and makes a note on a small pad before waving Edmonds back into line. That night, 2 prisoners are taken from a neighboring barracks and do not return. No explanation is given. The message is clear. Fear spreads again, quieter this time, more controlled. Jewish prisoners consider shaving, changing names, inventing backgrounds. Edmonds intervenes where he can, discouraging individual action that might expose others. He insists on collective discipline. No one speaks alone. No one reacts alone. One evening, an American private collapses during roll call. His body hits the frozen ground hard. A guard raises his rifle, more irritated than alarmed. Edmonds steps forward instantly, arguing that the man is sick, unfit for standing. The guard hesitates, then lowers the weapon. The private is dragged to the infirmary, alive. Moments like these accumulate, small and relentless. Each one tests the thin margin between survival and execution. Inside the barracks, Edmonds listens more than he speaks. Men talk about home, about wives and sweethearts, about baseball games and city streets that feel impossibly distant. Others speak of faith, quietly, cautiously. Edmonds does not interrupt. He understands that memory is a weapon here, a way to resist becoming only a number behind wire. Late one night, distant explosions ripple through the ground. The guards are tense the next day, movements sharper, voices raised. Allied forces are pushing closer. Aircraft pass overhead more frequently now, the sound unmistakable. Hope stirs, but Edmonds suppresses open optimism. Desperation makes captors dangerous. During a surprise inspection, a German officer flips through identification tags collected from fallen soldiers. He pauses, holding up one with a clearly Jewish surname. The silence is suffocating. Edmonds feels dozens of eyes shift toward him without turning their heads. The officer asks where the man is. Edmonds answers calmly that the soldier was transferred weeks earlier due to illness. The explanation is thin, but the officer does not press. He pockets the tag and moves on. Another close call. Another life balanced on words chosen carefully under pressure. By February, disease spreads through the camp. Dysentery, pneumonia, frostbite that never heals properly. The dead are carried out wrapped in blankets, faces already stiff. Each loss hardens the survivors, but it also deepens the unspoken bond among them. Edmonds' authority is never formalized, but it is absolute. Guards address him directly. Prisoners look to him instinctively when tension rises. Leadership here has become a burden carried without ceremony. One afternoon, a German guard mutters to another, loud enough to be heard, that the war is lost. Edmonds catches the phrase. He files it away. Collapse does not come all at once. It comes in cracks, in tone, in hesitation. As winter begins to loosen its grip, the camp feels different, still brutal, still lethal, but fragile. Edmonds knows the most dangerous period is approaching. Retreating armies destroy evidence. Prisoners become liabilities. He prepares the men quietly, urging readiness, caution, unity. The choice he made weeks earlier continues to echo, not as a single act of defiance, but as a constant state of resistance. renewed every day under watchtowers and rifles, and soon, events beyond the wire will force a reckoning that no one in the camp can control. March 1945, early morning. Ziegenhain, prisoner of war camp, Germany. The ground is no longer completely frozen. Patches of mud replace the hard ice, clinging to boots and slowing every movement. Winter is losing its grip, but the camp feels no relief. If anything, tension has sharpened. German guards argue openly now. Orders contradict each other. Trucks arrive and leave without explanation. Before dawn, prisoners are forced into formation. The count takes longer than usual. A German officer walks the line repeatedly, stopping to study faces, checking hands, posture, reactions. He pauses in front of Edmonds longer than necessary, then moves on without a word. Whispers circulate that the camp may be evacuated. Some say the prisoners will be marched east. Others fear executions before retreat. No one knows which rumor is worse. Work details are suspended that day. The prisoners remain inside the wire, confined to the yard for hours under armed watch. Aircraft engines thunder overhead. Closer now, unmistakably allied. Anti-aircraft fire erupts in the distance. Smoke rises beyond the tree line. In the afternoon, a heated argument breaks out between two German officers near the command building. Voices rise. One slams a fist against a table visible through a window. Orders are shouted. Guards are reassigned. The camp's internal structure is visibly unraveling. That evening, Edmonds is summoned to the command building. Two armed guards escort him through the mud. Inside, the air is warmer, smelling of tobacco and stale paper. A senior officer sits behind a desk, cluttered with maps and reports. He accuses Edmonds of undermining discipline, of organizing resistance, of protecting Jews within the camp. The words are spoken flatly, without anger, as if listing items on an inventory sheet. Edmonds listens, unmoving. The officer threatens execution, not immediate, but implied, hanging in the silence that follows. Edmonds responds with the same restraint he has used before. He reminds the officer of international law, of the Geneva Convention, of accountability when the war ends. The officer laughs, short and bitter. He says there may be no one left to judge. Edmonds is dismissed and marched back to the barracks. That night, no one sleeps. Men sit upright, boots on, waiting for alarms, for gunfire, for anything. The sound of distant artillery continues through the darkness like a heartbeat. 2 days later, the evacuation order comes. Prisoners are given minutes to prepare. Those too sick to walk are left behind. No explanation is offered. Columns form at the gate, guarded by soldiers whose discipline now relies entirely on fear and habit. The march begins at dawn. The road is narrow, lined with trees just beginning to show hints of green. Mud sucks at boots. Anyone who falls is kicked upright or dragged until they can walk again. Edmonds moves along the column, checking on men when he can, using brief eye contact, a nod, a whispered word. Unity remains their only defense. After hours of marching, gunfire erupts ahead. The column halts abruptly. Guards shout. Confusion spreads. Then, unmistakably, American artillery shells crash in the distance. The sound is closer than ever before. German guards exchange frantic looks. Some run. Others drop their weapons. A white cloth appears on a rifle barrel near the front of the column. Moments later, American soldiers emerge from the tree line, weapons raised, uniforms filthy but unmistakable. The guards surrender without resistance. The prisoners stand frozen, unsure whether to move, to cheer, to collapse. The war is not over, but for these men, captivity is. Medical teams arrive quickly. The wounded are treated. Names are taken. Units identified. Edmonds finally allows himself to sit, exhaustion crashing over him in a wave he can no longer resist. In the days that follow, the full weight of what occurred begins to surface. Jewish soldiers come forward formally now, alive, documented, safe. Officers take statements. The confrontation in the camp is recorded, then filed away as the war races toward its end. Edmonds does not seek recognition. He returns home quietly, carrying memories he does not speak of. The men he saved scatter across countries and decades, building lives that might never have existed. But history has not finished with that moment behind the wire. April 1945. Early morning, southern Germany. The war no longer advances in clear lines. It collapses. German units dissolve into fragments, some surrendering, others fleeing without orders, abandoning vehicle. weapons, and wounded comrades along the roads. Villages wake to silence where command once existed. Smoke rises from places no one bothers to defend anymore. For the former prisoners, liberation does not arrive as triumph. It arrives as confusion. American troops secure the area surrounding the abandoned column. Medics move quickly among the men, some still unable to understand that no one is guarding them anymore. Rifles lie discarded in the mud. German uniforms are piled near the road. The guards who once shouted orders now sit on the ground, hands raised, faces hollow. Roddie Edmonds watches it unfold in silence. He does not cheer. He does not speak. His body finally reacts to weeks of restraint, knees weak, hands trembling slightly as the tension drains away. The responsibility he carried has not ended, but its immediate weight is gone. Names are taken. Units are identified. Some men collapse where they stand. Others cry openly for the first time in months. Jewish soldiers, once forced into silence, now speak freely, their identities no longer a death sentence. The fear that controlled every breath inside the camp loosens its grip. In the days that follow, the survivors are transported to recovery areas. Doctors document malnutrition, frostbite, disease, injuries ignored for months. Each man becomes evidence, living proof of what occurred behind wire and watchtowers. Edmonds is questioned repeatedly. Allied officers listen as he explains the confrontation in the camp, the order he gave, the threat he faced. His account is calm, precise, stripped of drama. He does not frame it as courage. He frames it as obligation. When asked why he acted, his answer is simple. The men under his authority were soldiers. He was responsible for all of them. The war in Europe ends weeks later. Celebrations erupt across cities and towns. Newspapers fill with images of victory, parades, flags. Edmonds returns home quietly, one uniform among millions. There is no public ceremony waiting for him, no official recognition. The world is already turning toward the future. Life resumes. Years pass, then decades. Edmonds builds a family, works, grows older. The war becomes something he rarely speaks about. The camp remains sealed in memory, not hidden, but set aside. Like many who survived, he carries it privately, aware that some experiences resist language. The men he saved do not forget. They remember the sound of the rifle being raised, the stillness, the certainty that death was seconds away, and they remember the order that erased their isolation, transforming individuals into an unbreakable line. As time moves forward, survivor testimonies begin to surface. Recorded interviews, written statements, separate accounts that align with striking consistency. Historians notice the pattern. The event in the prisoner of war camp emerges slowly from obscurity, not as myth, but as documented fact. Long after Edmonds has died, his son uncovers these testimonies. He reads words written by men whose lives continued because his father refused to allow separation. Each account fills gaps left by silence. Together, they form a complete record. In 2015, the State of Israel formally recognizes Roddie Edmonds as righteous among the nations. It is the highest honor given to non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. He becomes the first American soldier to receive it. At the ceremony, survivors stand beside descendants. Names are spoken aloud, not as victims, but as witnesses. More than 200 lives are accounted for, along with the generations that followed them. The recognition does not transform Edmonds into something he never claimed to be. It clarifies what happened. During one of the most brutal winters of the Second World War, inside a camp designed to strip men of identity, one individual refused to comply with a system built on division and extermination. Not through violence, not through negotiation, but through absolute moral refusal. The Battle of the Bulge is remembered for its scale, its desperation, its frozen forests and shattered divisions. Yet within that vast machinery of destruction, a single moment stands untouched by strategy or firepower. On December 20th, 1944, at 07:15 in the morning, near St. Vith, Belgium, the course of over 200 lives changed because one man understood that leadership does not begin with rank, but with responsibility. The war ended months later. The consequences of that decision did not. They remain alive, carried forward in every life that continued when it should have been erased.